Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Demers. Welcome to Good Morning, Good Night, episode 12. I'm here with my friend Will Chobra. Will Chobra. I always fill in your username, even though that's not your last name.
That's fine.
We're two guys working in esports on opposite ends of the world, talking about life, talking about gaming, talking about how to, make your career better and all that other kind of stuff. We haven't really settled on a niche on this podcast, but I'm happy with where it's gone so far. We just kind of figure out a topic and then just expand on it. But I don't know. How's life with you, Will?
It's good. It's good. No, I agree. It's kind of nice to, partially just for myself as well, but I think sometimes just getting to hear other more just day-to-day or random topics or encounters, right? Because
totally.
Also I feel unless you have a really, really solid long-term plan, and this isn't just about podcasts, but even say classes or courses, right? Unless you have a really solid long-term plan, sometimes things just get kind of shoehorned in there.
Totally.
This is our career planning.
It's
definitely,
definitely.
Calm down.
Yeah, and to be honest, those kind of topics don't really have that kind of longevity unless you've built a course around it, like you were saying. It's I think one of the topics, something that we didn't plan to talk for, but I think that's come up a lot lately is the thought of the esports degree. I don't know if you've seen a bunch of those tweets in the last week.
I have a lot to say about that.
You have a lot to say, but do you want to go into that? Because I think that's a fun topic. I think it's a fun topic.
Let's save it. Let's save it because
okay.
I don't want to get onto it too spontaneously,
totally,
which is
totally.
partially why I didn't jump into it on Twitter.
Yeah.
But
that's
there's been a lot of
course.
talk for sure.
So to set it up for later, I guess, just to not leave people hanging in this topic or in this conversation, is that there's been a lot of conversation about. I think it was I think Red Eye was the first person that tweeted about it or was reacting to someone else, but there was a line item in the university's budget saying they were dropping an esports degree or something like that, or dropping planning for it, or maybe implementing it. I don't remember. It was I
think it was implementing it.
It was something. Sure. It was looking at a budget, and I think the title of the budget or the first thing on the budget was all the courses they were dropping because of COVID. So I think that part of that line item was that, but they're basically just the conversation spiraled outwards of, what the nature of an esports specific degree, not just a program and not just a class, or I guess not just a class, but more an entire program, like a multi-year program or degree, what that would look like, or what they would, what it would do with it. And I think that the majority of the opinions that I saw were just, if someone came to me with an esports degree, I would not hire them. I would that would
right.
be an active detriment to me wanting to hire them. So I'm tempted to go into it, so I'm going to save it. We're going to save it, Will.
Yeah. We'll save it. I was about to explode, but
it's there's a little bit of, as you can tell, there's a little bit of an emotion behind it, and I don't know. I always love thinking about these topics because it's just how new our industry is. So. Anyways, life is good for you, Will. I see you. I see you powering through still Final Fantasy. You've eclipsed Final Fantasy X, which is I'm proud of you, because Final Fantasy X was my first Final Fantasy, and I still have a bit of an attachment to it. I still have a bit of an attachment to 10. So, how did you find it? Did you like it?
Yeah, no, I so far, so for those who don't know, I've recently entered the Final Fantasy universe. So I've played 7 Remake, 7 Original, Crisis Core as an addition to 7, and then 8, 9, and now I just finished 10 last week. And
That's
out of
a
those
marathon.
10,
you started playing all of those okay,
in April when Remake came out.
Well, I was gonna say think about our pod. You've been playing these in time with our podcast, and our podcast is 12 weeks old. So in 12 weeks, you've played 4 60+ hour RPGs and a sequel and a remake, and it's dude, wow, that's a lot.
A lot's happened.
That's a lot of Square Enix, man. That's a lot of one type of game.
Yeah, someone had to remind me. They were just even in March, you had no idea about this universe. And I was like, oh my gosh, it hasn't been that long, but it feels like I've been in this like time chamber for
yeah, you just mainlined it. You just hooked up an IV bag to your veins and just said like, just give it all to me, man. Just I don't like, for
hey,
me,
man,
I
good.
would go sick. I would go sick of that.
I mean, I you know, I am kind of surprised that I'm like okay with it. But I think it's a combination of they've clearly aged well enough that they still draw you in if you haven't played them.
Yeah.
Plus, I also recognize that they're like heralded so highly by everybody, and so me getting to experience it for the first time, plus like join in, I think just that those two pieces of adrenaline have fueled it.
And your stream audience wanting you to play it also helps. Like,
well, yes, people enjoying it, and like because every Final Fantasy like has its own kind of stronger fan base. Each one like draws in a different crowd. There are still there's still the regular community around my stream that is very supportive. But each time there's always someone comes in, they're like, oh, this one's my favorite. They're like 8's my favorite, or like 10's my favorite, and that's always a cool conversation to have. So that helps as well for sure. Like if I was just playing this alone during quarantine with nobody to talk to about it, then it probably would not have happened like this. But
are you playing like mini games and stuff? Are you like just powering through the story?
I am. So 7 and 8 I powered through the story mostly. I think just as I've gone through it now that I'm a little more used to just how Final Fantasy works, right? I'm a little more used to the pacing and what things do, right? Like the common occurrences and chocobos or certain summons or whatever. So now that I'm a little more used to it, I think I'm more comfortable exploring a bit more. But also, I've never been one to really latch on to wanting to like 100% a game.
Yeah.
It's actually funny. So not to go into it for too long, but so there was an incident in 10-2, which we're on right now, where I guess if I say it, it's going to go on record.
There was an incident.
Past, but there was an incident where I played it for 10 hours, and then the next day we restarted.
Oh, on purpose or by accident?
No, on purpose, because because I turned off stream and I just couldn't shake off this feeling that I had been like pushed forward against my will in terms of the story, and that I had missed a lot of things.
Okay. So you went back
after a painstaking conversation on stream and just pondering, I made the rash decision to go back and restart. And currently I am very glad I did that. But that brought up the question of everyone was like, well, are you like trying to 100% it? And the whole time I'm like, well, no, like that's not it. But I have this weird, I guess, standard on like, it's okay if I miss stuff because, they were supposed to be like hidden Easter eggs, or they were supposed to be side stuff that kind of rewards you for finding it. But also if I feel that something is pretty core to the experience, and then if I didn't know about it just because I felt that I got pushed out of it, if you know what that means. So
no,
for
totally,
anyone who hasn't played 10-2, 10-2 is not like it's very different in that it's kind of presented like a dungeon crawler. And each like location on the map has a mission or doesn't, and you're free to explore. But in the very beginning, like not much is explained, and they just throw you into the game, and they're like, here are these hotspots where we've like discovered these like beacons, and that's supposed to indicate that that's the main story. And so because there's not much explanation, you're like, all right, well, like I guess I'll start the story because like that's a good place to start. And then before you know it, it's like, by the way, chapter 1 just ended.
Oh, okay,
and like the map kind of like resets, and I'm like, wait, what? And I was like, wait, what do you mean chapter 1 ended?
I didn't even know we were doing it.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't even know we were close to the end of the chapter. Like I was just flipping pages, and then suddenly the chapter's just over. So then that spawned a long discussion as well on stream about kind of what I view as core to the experience. So this really just now comes down to subjective differences, but and then I went back, and now I'm finding like I found a bunch of So in 10-2, like the progression system are these like grid cards and dress spheres. So I missed a bunch of those. And to me, while I don't need to collect every single one of them, it's okay if I maybe this is biased, but I'm okay if I miss it knowing that I tried to look for them because I know they exist, versus like, hey, this very new novel core part of this game called a new character progression system existed all along, but then we like launched you out of chapter 1. Right? Like, and it's not necessarily bad game design. I think it's just how you view it, and also probably just I like jumped into it too fast, and so I don't want to say it's necessarily bad design. It's just it begged a lot of questions from viewers as well, from chat, of like, wait, I thought like you didn't care about 100%, and I was like, I don't. And someone in chat was just one of my mods is reminding me, in fact, once we restarted, I missed something I got on my first file. Nice. And instantly there was a regret, but I was like, okay, that's fine, because that's on me. Like, that is 100% on me, and like, I'll live with it. But yeah, so it was an interesting thing. But the going back to your question, so I'm not trying to 100%, but at the same time, now that I'm more used to it, I want to at least explore enough that I know what's there, and then I can kind of choose if I want to commit to it or not. So 10, obviously, you said you've played it, and for those who played it, you know that when you get to a certain area in the game later on, like, things just open up, and there's like tons of mini games and grinding and, you know, searching to do. So I spent a lot of time on it. I didn't complete all of it, but I had fun kind of testing all the different mechanics. So that was enjoyable. And right now we just got done on stream playing pretty much just mini games for like 4 hours as well at 10-2.
I think the desire to complete things, like especially in your situation, there's a number of different like factors in there. There's for a lot of people, 100%ing an RPG, especially when it's like, I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles right now, and that's like a 100+ hour game.
So good.
The first one anyway, and that's like a 100+ hour game. But I'm realizing that I kind of just want to get through it before the remake or the definitive edition comes out. And I don't. I played the hell out of 2 for the Switch.
Okay.
And I bought X for the Wii U, and I really didn't like that one. But I guess my point is that there's a couple different factors. Is that one, you're playing it on stream, so there's So you have like not necessarily viewer fatigue, but there is the thought of like, okay, the longer I go on with this, the more I find for story-based games and for RPGs especially, it's like it's more friendly playing older RPGs on stream, because people are more likely to have already played it and then want to experience your experience of the game, rather than if you're playing something that's brand new, like Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's like I purposely didn't watch remake streams because I want to play it one day.
Right.
So
no, I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Yakuza games. Yakuza games, unless you're like specifically doing mini games or specifically doing side stories, which aren't like congruent to the main plot, there are people who are like, well, I want to play it one day, so I don't want to spoil it by watching your stream. So it's not necessarily a personal choice, like oh, I don't want to watch you. It's more of I'm sorry, I just want to experience it myself. So older RPGs are generally a lot more friendly for that. But there's also the thought of you want to have like the whole experience for your stream, but there's also the thought of I don't need 100% this because I don't need to make this experience last. Like for super long RPGs that have a lot of like, you know, if you want to do all of the Blitzball stuff in order to get Waka's final weapon, which is absolutely broken, by the way. Attack reels, which are like the final thing from Blitzball stuff, is like completely broken. But the thought of that is that, okay, I don't have another game to play for a really long time, like hypothetically,
right,
like,
especially at the time when that game was released.
Yeah, that's a PS2 game. Like, you know, the PS2 was still relatively affordable even later in the life. Like I worked at a Walmart during the end of life for PS2, and there were still people buying the Slim regularly. So like if you're the type of person that can only afford like one game per year, or like birthdays or Christmas or kind of stuff, you pick something like that's going to last you a while. And that's when you 100% an RPG and do all the stuff, is because you don't have the option of playing anything else. But in our kind of abundance, you know, society for this kind of stuff where, you know, there's so much free stuff because of COVID, but there's also tons of stuff that, you know, you can buy like really good games for like dollars, or like you go to a Humble Bundle. I paid like $25 and got like, you know, a bunch of Capcom games, which are actually really good. They're a little older, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I've got Devil May Cry 4 for like as part of a bundle, and I've just forgotten about it because it was $5 kind of thing, right? So those things are in mind where you don't necessarily have to do the entire thing. The only time that I 100% RPGs now is when I'm really invested in the world and really want to like purposefully do everything so I never have to pick the game up again. And I think I talked about that with like Persona, where it was like, I don't want to replay the 72-hour game, thank you. So let's just do everything on the first try and then just say, okay, I'm done with this. I don't want to pick it up anymore. I'm done with this experience. I've compartmentalized it. I've put it back in its case. I'm fine with it. And I don't know. Final Fantasies are good for that. I really like 10. 10 is probably my favorite Final Fantasy because of its battle system. I don't like active time battle. I don't like active time battle. Okay. I don't like waiting for meters to fill, or like I know that the meters are kind of just like a representative for the, like, it isn't real, right, if that makes sense. It's still turn-based kind of thing. But I liked 10 because there wasn't that like meter filling and pressure and whatever. I liked being able to switch out party members whenever I wanted, kind of thing. And I liked how they made enemies and encounters based around each character's strengths. So if you had a flying enemy, you had to switch walking, right, and you didn't just put someone on the bench and leave them there for the entire game.
Well,
sorry, Kamari. Sorry, Riku.
Oh, it's so funny because I was all about Kamari from like the get-go for no other reason than I just thought his character was cool.
Yeah, he's Phantom Lancer.
And so yeah,
from Dota 1.
Exactly.
He's Kamari.
So for me, it was Lulu that got benched. Lulu's
really?
The black mage for anyone.
She's useful.
Trust me, I got a mouthful from chat the whole time I was playing the game. Every time I'd have trouble with an enemy, they're like, "Well, it'd be damn useful if you had a leveled up black mage."
If you just had magic, you might not have this problem. I think we have to agree,
we
though,
got
that
through it okay.
Oron is like perma first stringer. Like Oron is like never gets moved.
Oron was pretty sick. Just by the end, because of how my sphere grid, my character progression worked out, and just for like story's sake, I ended it with like Tidus, Yuna, and Kimahri.
Oh, nice.
I was all about Kimahri.
I don't know. Like, you're the exact opposite of me. I never used Kimahri whatsoever. I don't like blue mages as an archetype. I don't like the.
It's funny because I neglected all the blue mages until that point.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, I was like, "This is gonna be sick." It wasn't as sick as I thought it would be, but I also just liked his character. Yeah, I think I was just kind of drawn to it, and
for reference,
so it was cool.
For reference, blue mages are characters that take enemy skills and use them.
Right.
And usually you have to like fight an enemy to a degree where the blue mage learns an enemy skill, and then you can usually use it. So Kimahri is kind of a fusion of two different archetypes in Final Fantasy, which is like the Dragoon, which is like spears and jumping and that kind of stuff, but also is a blue mage. And for some reason, those archetypes never really they bounce off me really quickly. So I don't know. I never used Kimahri. I never used Riku. I never used like I think I get where you're coming from with Lulu, because what I ended up doing was the sphere grid is like the character progression in Final Fantasy X, and allows you
which is really cool.
It's really cool, and it allows you a big degree of character customization, where instead of like each character being its own archetype, like they start as an archetype, but you can build them how you want. And I think I took Yuna and gave her black magic spells that Lulu had because of the sphere grid. And then I just made Lulu kind of obsolete because I don't know. I was thinking about this while we were thinking about topics for today's podcast, and I knew that you were playing Final Fantasy, and I was like, how do you feel about 3 character parties versus 4 character parties?
Ooh.
Because For me, I've noticed this where every time I'm playing a 3-character party, I wish there was a 4th character, because it means that you have to build each character very specifically. You have, like, for me, maybe it's just me, but it's like when I have a 3-character party, it has to be tank, DPS, support, kind of way, unless the game doesn't have like taunt mechanics.
Okay, so I know while we're on this topic,
yeah, no problem.
Am I the only one that feels that tanks just don't seem to really exist in Final Fantasy?
Oh no, they don't, because there's no
okay.
When you get to 12, that's different, because 12 is like 12
okay.
is a, 12
well, then
is
I'm
a,
excited for 12.
12 is a solo MMO. 12 was basically
Okay.
them going and being like, how can we make an MMO offline? And like,
Gotcha.
I think you'll really like the Gambit system, which is
Okay.
the Gambit system is literally like, those like beginner programming things where they just like take a bunch of blocks, like building blocks, and then you make like a computer program out of them, where it's like, that's Gambits, where like you can set up your healer to literally have a dozen different actions, where it's like, if character is under 50%, if character does not have cast haste, like you can automate the entirety of combat in Final Fantasy 12. And I think there is, I don't remember if there is a strict like aggro mechanic, but there is a certain degree of like MMO archetypes. But it definitely, I agree with you that in Final Fantasy games and other games, there isn't usually a taunt kind of mechanic. Like I play a lot of Dragon
there's not
Quest.
like a blatant aggro mechanic. So I'm with you. Generally, like I also, when I play MMOs, I'm big on like tank type characters or like paladin type characters. So lots of aggro control, lots of crowd control. So just without any knowledge of how Final Fantasy worked, ever since 7, I've always had someone just to take damage, right? And just to be alive, right? They were basically my emergency Phoenix down carrier. And like every time people were like, why don't you just do damage with them? And I'm like,
it's a safety blanket.
They're my tank.
It's a safety blanket.
And after 10, both my viewers and I have realized I also just generally play very, very conservative and survivalist. So all my battles just drag on forever. Like, but I'm okay with that. Personally, I'm okay with that. But like, we just noticed now that that's a pattern.
Are you a person that needs to buff everyone before you start combat? Like, do you need to cast?
Like, I have someone.
Everyone has to be.
I specifically always have someone that is just there to buff the party, like nonstop.
No, that makes sense. It makes sense. It's just like, for me, I get impatient. Where I get impatient to the point where I'm like, okay, let's just start combat already. Like, I don't want to spend like 3 turns like making sure, like especially if you don't have the like haste all. Like haste is usually a very useful spell in these games, because it allows you to take more turns. It allows you to accelerate the amount of time that it takes for your turn to come up again. So normally, if you want to be the most optimal, you want to make sure that each party member is hasted. But if you don't have the ability to cast haste on everyone at once, that means you're wasting your buffer's turn 4 times or 3 times, however many party members there are, to buff this person and this person, this person, this person. And like in Dragon Quest 11, that buff only lasts 3 turns. So like you're pretty much just like spending time just trying to set up, when in reality you could have ended the fight by then, just by having that person either be another character that's completely damage based, or I don't know, it's usually bosses. Bosses are the things that are fun to set up on, because you usually have a little bit more time, or you have to survive.
It's going to drag on a little bit anyway, so you can kind of utilize that to try to balance it out in the long run. But you'll appreciate this. So in my playthrough of 10, Tidus, who is the main character, and generally main characters are meant to do some good damage in one way, shape, or another. He was basically just my buff shuttle, as we called him. And so he would start the fight. He would have auto haste. So he would go into the fight with haste. He would cast all the buffs, and then I would rotate him out. And then as soon as someone goes down, I'd bring him back in, res them, buff them, and then he'd leave again.
The
So that was how I played 10.
The thing is that with Final Fantasy, it's very interesting to see the evolution of, or like what they keep from game to game, because if you look back at like Final Fantasy 1, that was a lot more Dungeons and Dragons influenced. Like Japan's RPGs, like I did a little bit of research on the first Dragon Quest game because I'm really into Dragon Quest over Final Fantasy for some reason. I don't know why. But they were very much based off like Ultima and like really early like PC RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of stuff. They just like were like, oh man, this stuff's amazing. You can play tabletop RPGs and try to make it into a video game. So the thing is, there's certain archetypes that, like character archetypes, that extend from game to game, and Tidus is interesting because he's supposed to be like a time mage, which is like one of those weird ass archetypes that I only see in Final Fantasy games, which is like the spells that are like gravity and time based stuff. And I always think that's just like such a weird archetype where it's much more pronounced in 12 as well, because you can develop a certain character to do time magey stuff, and it's just about slowing down enemies, speeding up your party. But I don't know. I think Dragon Quest, like I said, is different because it's a lot more classic. Like it's a lot more slower turn based, and you have
very classic,
and you have 4 party members, and that's one of the things I really like about it. I don't know. It's just like there's more flexibility. You can do more with your characters. You can do more with your turns in general because there's more stuff. There's one more character to make a choice with, and you don't have that problem of sacrificing one character to be your heal person. It's like if you can. I don't know. I think with 3, I always feel that I'm like, oh, this one character is just wasted because that person has to be healing, reviving, buffing, that kind of stuff. And then you're like, okay, well, I got 2 characters left. And with 4, you can usually spread that around 2 people. You can usually have like one person be like a combination caster healer, and then another person like more buffing or something like that. But I don't know. Chrono Trigger has 3, and Chrono Trigger is a perfect RPG. So like I can't really poop on it too much. But
true that.
I have one warning for you, and it's a warning that if your chat is like super into Final Fantasy, they'll echo my sentiment. If you have the combo, like the package of all the Final Fantasy,
I have the remaster package.
Don't read that book. There's like a book or like a sequel to 10-2 where it's like an audio drama or something like that. Don't read it.
Wait, is that in the compilation? I thought that
think
was
it might be. I don't remember
additional.
if it is or not. I think they might have included it or something like that. Don't read it. It's stupid.
There's like one person championing for it.
Don't do it. It's dumb. Like, I really like the lore of Final Fantasy X. I like the world, and I like how the characters are and that kind of stuff. That book completely ruins all of it. Don't do it. It's stupid.
Oh, now you've really piqued my curiosity, Matt.
It's dumb. Don't do it. If you like any of the characters or settings or how the story ends in Final Fantasy X or X-2, don't read that book. It's stupid.
Okay. All right.
That's another thing with Japan that I love is the extraneous errata, which is like, this is a stage play. That only I make that joke about Yoko Taro, who does like Nier and Nier Automata, is that he'll introduce some like really important plot element in a stage play that only took place once in his backyard for 3 people. That's my ongoing thing with him, is that like everything's canon. Everything's canon, and it's like, oh yeah, this one like store promotion that had a standee that said a piece of dialogue, that's canon. And if you didn't see that store standee, God help you, you missed out on this super big plot explanation. You can't find it anywhere else. You better hope someone took a photo of it, because screw you.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
especially with Yoko Taro.
Especially with Yoko
really
Taro.
True.
With Nier and
Really
Nier
true.
Automata and Drakengard and stuff, all that stuff is just like super obtuse, and he loves his photo books, or he loves his like, this is a super exclusive, like piece of media that tells something super important about the game world, but only like 4 dozen people and that's a very weird number to use because I didn't want to say like 400, but like a very limited subset of people are going to be able to experience it. And he's just like, yup, let's do that. I don't know. It could be worse. It could be like Akira Toriyama, like who does he drew Dragon Ball and drew, all the art for Dragon Quest and all that stuff. The thing is with him, all his stuff's the same. You look at it and you're like, wow, this character's Trunks, this character's Bulma.
Yep. Yeah.
They look the exact same. And God help him, he's a lazy man, and he's admitted he's just like, did you know that the only reason Goku has yellow hair is because he didn't like inking his black hair? That's it. That's
no
it.
way.
The only reason Super
Really?
Saiyan Goku is because in the manga it shows up as white. It doesn't show
Right.
up as yellow because it's black and white, right?
Right.
He has an interview where he's just like, yeah, I make Goku a Super Saiyan because I hate inking his hair.
That's awesome.
He also he did hunt down interviews of Akira Toriyama explaining how lazy he is, where he's just like,
That is amazing.
I created a manga after Dragon Ball, but before Dragon Ball Z, that was about a tank, and I drew that tank and I was like, oh my god, this tank design is amazing. And then like 2 years later, I hated drawing that tank so much that the manga ended. He just like Akira Toriyama is just like, I don't care. I want to draw what I think is cool, and I'm gonna forget about He's a man that creates his own toys.
My God.
He creates toys that he likes, and then when he's done, he's bored of playing with those toys go in a box. They go in a box, and they get thrown in a closet, and then he creates something new. And like, God love him. Like, he's created so many important things in media, but at the same time, you look at some Dragon Quest games. Like Dragon Quest V had a remake for PS2 that I'm playing right now, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, holy shit! You just took a character, a full design from one of the main characters in the main party of Dragon Quest XI. I ran across an NPC in Dragon Quest V that has this exact same design, and I'm like, God damn it, Toriyama, you lazy bastard! Like, right down to the fez on his head. I'm like, wow, that's this character in this game. Thanks, Akira.
That's awesome.
Like, sorry, we were supposed to.
He's unlocked the secret.
The secret is
making
efficiency.
bank.
It's efficiency. It's reuse things. It's take that hairstyle from Trunks, put him on a main character in Dragon Quest VIII.
There you go.
People like Super Saiyan. Let's go to Dragon Quest VIII and let's say, okay, if your main character has high tension, which requires some charging and whatever, he goes Super Saiyan, only with purple hair this time. And you're just like, all right, fine, I get it. I guess this is what I signed up for. Like, that's the thing. You can't sign up for a Dragon Quest game or something drawn or whatever by him and expect like 100% new things. You're getting recycled concepts, and you're getting, I don't know, like Chrono Trigger dodged the bullet because it was so early, and he was only an artist. Like, that's the thing.
Right.
He had so comparatively little to do with Chrono Trigger that, fine. Marl, it looks exactly like Bulma, but who cares?
Yeah, especially in the artwork. Like,
especially in
100%.
You're like, okay, Chrono kind of looks like Goku, kinda, but like, you've got Robo, you've got Frog. Those are unique enough designs,
Yeah.
RPGs are great. RPGs are great.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. The only thing that I was curious about actually was when you were saying that you've had people with you the entire time. Is that almost its own like meta thing where it's not necessarily Will plays it's not Will plays Final Fantasy this game. It's how does Will play RPGs? Like you're saying that
now
people are picking up on your habits. It's like, that's almost its own appeal, right? It's seeing.
Well, people have definitely been picking up on things I'm bad at. That's for sure.
Have you hoarded all your Mega Elixirs? Are you a hoarder?
I hoard real hard. I am a huge hoarder in any game, and this I knew coming into it.
Because there's memes about that now.
Yeah.
Totally
So I hoard I hoard a lot of items. I spend a lot of time in menus, just sitting there thinking about the
You
stuff
have an
and,
emote
like,
that's like Chobra menu, isn't it, or something?
it's actually being made right now.
Oh, okay,
but
cool.
because
I'm
chat
glad.
just spammed it, they're like, Chobra menu, here we go again.
See you in an hour.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'll be back tomorrow, and we're still in the same place. So I overplan, and obviously it never works out 100%, and then I'm back in the menu because it didn't work out. There's like memes about my memory, which apparently is very bad in these games. I've always thought I had a decent memory. No one in my chat believes me because so far in Final Fantasy I have not proven myself. But yeah, so I think part of the fun, both for the community hopefully and then myself as well, is just like, because sometimes it's fun to discover those things about yourself, because how would you know? Because you just play games the way you do. So
you don't have that
of
external
or like,
scrutiny. You don't have people pointing that out.
or like how I use characters, like we talked about earlier, things like that. So that has all kind of become a meta of its own. But I think the biggest thing was what you mentioned, is that and this has been the same for me, is that we run a pretty tight ship on my stream of like no spoilers, like no helping, right? Even if I get stuck. Like the big meme is in Final Fantasy VIII, in the final dungeon, I got stuck in a puzzle for like 5 hours, and it was like literally in front of my face. And I was like there, just like not figuring it out. And so there's, but there's this charm about that for me of like, I do get to still somewhat pretty much play it like I would, right? Yeah. It's just that I'm talking about it now. But then as soon as I do solve it, or if I miss it, and then like once the game ends, we have this whole like, we unleash the floodgates, and chat tells me, like everything I missed or everything I did, or selected wrong, and things like that. And there's also a charm of like, oh man, like now I get to join in on the conversation, and sometimes it's with regret, sometimes it's with joy, but that's all like part of the fun for me and the community. And I think it's like you said, it's hard to find that kind of interaction in other genres, right? RPGs, I think, are like best suited for it. I mean, some other story-based games, like adventure games, could pull it off as well. But RPGs, just because like we've talked about, there's just so much that's personalized per like gamer, of like how I use characters or how I use items, or like what order I do things in if it opens up, and all of that. So some people have come in and they'll say like, man, it was painful watching you do like X in a way, but also like fun, because like I wouldn't have thought to do that, or it just shows how different like people can perceive this one game. So that's been cool for me to hear that from people, and then recognize it, which is, I've mentioned it briefly before, but it's got me thinking a lot about like game design or game experiences and things like that.
Yeah, like once you play enough RPGs, you kind of recognize what tropes are. And I guess that's true with any kind of like movie or game or whatever, but with like RPGs, you don't have that kind of shared experience with something like Super Mario 64. Like if you said, I've never played Super Mario 64 before, I'm going to play through it on thing, you don't have that big floodgates opening of, oh yeah, this is what the lore means, and this is what this thing you missed, and blah blah blah. It's like you wouldn't have that same experience. And I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's specific to RPGs, and maybe I just chose a bad example, but like that catharsis of seeing, there's just so much depth in systems depending on the RPG that you play. And Final Fantasy, I think, has a very good balance of not overloading you with systems in terms of how things work, but still not just being like autopilot, where you just like, you just get a couple levels and then coast the entire game kind of thing. It also just like, I think that's what I like about them so much, is that you're rewarded for tinkering, and I really like tinkering with stats and that kind of stuff, and builds and that kind of junk. And that's one of the things I'm having trouble with going back and playing the original Final Fantasy VII right now, is like, I think I mentioned that I was playing the Switch version that has like a couple like pseudo cheats to help people get through the game faster, and that just made me completely not engage with the materia system at all. Like, I would not, like, in terms of how it's supposed to affect your stats, and in terms of how you're supposed to like level up materia and that kind of stuff. I just didn't engage with it. So that's what's making me want to like replay it completely is, okay, let's play it properly this time. Let's actually engage with the systems. And that's kind of what I'm finding with Xenoblade right now. I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles, and that's like, that has a sufficient depth to it where if you don't pay attention to the tutorials, or if you're not actively experimenting, there are certain mechanics that are going to knock you on your ass, where if you don't know the break topple days mechanics, or if you don't know if you don't know how to like count or like use the visions, like the main character gets visions of the future of big boss characters using big attacks, and if you don't use that vision, you have like 12 seconds in some cases, 8 seconds to use the appropriate counter to that. You're going to take a big hit, and it's like you can't just over level that. You know, the game is balanced around it assuming that you know how that works and you know how to counter it. And I'm running into bosses where I'm like, oh god, I know what the tutorial taught me, but I don't know how to counter it in a non-optimal situation. So I'm going on a wiki and looking for it, or you know, I'm reading fan explanations of how certain systems work. And that's how you know that you're really engaged in an RPG, is when you are not necessarily automatically going outside the game itself to learn, because I believe that a well-designed game has all the tools that you need inside it to learn how to play it, if that makes sense. But if you're looking to play it optimally, or if you're looking to kind of like break the game, or at least see how other fans interpret it, you know, where for me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, who do I use in my party? You know, like how do I build this character? Which arts do I max? You know, I don't want to spend 120 hours on this RPG. You know, I want to spend maybe 60, you know, and that's about half of what I use howlongtobeat.com.
Yeah, no, that game's long, man.
As my backlog system. Yeah. Xenoblade's long. I think I spent 120 on Xenoblade 2 or Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And then I never played they released like an expansion, which is like a prequel, and I never played that. I don't like prequels. I don't find them fun. Because in most cases I know how the story is going to go because I've played the original. And for a lot of it, it's like, I just think, what's the point? You know, if I'm satisfied with how the story ended, like if I look at that main thing and say, I'm content, I don't really need to know how they got to this point. It's because like, it's kind of like, you know, you can't change anything anyway. You know, if the end of the prequel is like tragic, or, you know where, like, I think the thing with that specific thing is, you know that the protagonists are going to fail. You know that the protagonists are going to, you know, not be successful, because that's how the main story is set up. That's how the first one was set up. So you're sitting there, I'm like, what's the point of playing it? You know, it's like, I'm going to get a lot more story, I guess, but I'm not so attached to that world that I really want to play another couple dozen hours of it. So I don't know. RPGs are great. I like them a lot, and they reward you for being engaged with their systems and thinking about them on a level of, like, I don't know. So I think these days, especially since we have so much choice, it's very tempting to want to speed through a game and get through the story and whatever. But with like Final Fantasy VII, you can break that game really easy, you know, really early.
Right.
With Final Fantasy VIII, you can break that game really early. with junctioning. Apparently, I've never played 8. I played a little bit of 7, but one of the things I love is how people have looked at it and they're like, oh yeah, this enemy skill materia is completely broken, and you can get a fire attack that hits all enemies for like a fraction of the mana that a normal Faraga spell takes.
Right.
And you can just break the game really easy, really early, and just coast through the entire thing. And I'm like, wow, that takes some dedication. That takes some ingenuity, and I can appreciate that. Remember when we were going to talk about Dota this podcast? We had a conversation before this podcast, and we were like, yeah, we're going to talk about the Dota Battle Pass. We're going to talk about battle passes in general. And then it was like, nah, man, RPGs.
I mean, yeah, RPGs are a rabbit hole. You could always go on forever about those. But I still want to touch upon
of course.
The Battle Pass a little bit, just because obviously it's very, I mean, it's pretty much today, right? So it's very recent.
It's an esports tradition. And I don't think esports esports do not have traditions like that many. and even
not
if
too many. Yeah.
well, you have people trying to do that El Clasico thing where it's this team versus this team, but it's like teams don't have the permanence to be able to do that. Teams don't have the permanence to be able to constantly be a good match year to year. So the international, for people who don't know, is the Dota Super Bowl. It's the Dota World Championships, and since 2013, the third one, they put out this thing called a compendium, and that's turned into a battle pass, and this is just nomenclature, doesn't really matter, but the compendium was a way for people to buy essentially an in-game program that was, this is predictions, this is extra loot, this is player biographies and information and stuff like that. But the kicker is that for every one you bought, if a player bought one, every 25% of it would go to the prize pool. And I'm sitting on the Dota 2 prize tracker website right now, which is a third-party tracker of how much the prize pool has increased. And you look at the 2013 international, and doubling the prize pool was like a novelty back then. It started at 1.6. It started at $1.6 million, and then the community raised it by 79% to 2,800,000. I'm not going to go through the entire number, but
sure.
You go to last year, and last year it was increased. It started at 1.6 million again, and it increased by 2,045%. So, imagine we were so proud in 2013. Wow, we doubled the prize pool. We affected these esports players' lives. We made it a little bit more, fine for these people to compete and stability and stuff. And then you look and you're just like, wow, we raised $32 million, and that's only 25%. So you take the 75%, and that's how much Valve got. And you're just
that's always what gets me.
What's
that 75%?
You take that $32 million and you times it by 3. So Valve made $96 million last year, just from the international.
The one event. Yeah.
The thing was with this year, it's this is the thing, is it's almost like the boogeyman. It's when will the international not be a higher prize pool than the last one? And this year is more difficult because I don't think they're postponing it because of COVID, and it's kind of it came out yesterday, and I'm looking at the prize tracker, and last year it's plus 17 hours. So it came out 17 hours ago. This time last year, from again 1.2 million or 1.6 million, excuse me, our increase was 6,400,000, and 0 days, 17 hours this year is 6,900,000. So we are $500,000 more bigger. And I looked at this morning, and I was like, holy crap, whales, man. Whales, and
that's crazy.
It's whales, and it's also people who know the metagame of what an international looks like.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
A couple of years ago, it was unthinkable to hear about these Chinese teams or hear about people who just rocket up to level 1,000 battle pass on day one. It was unthinkable, because you're like, oh my God, how many people, who can spend that amount of money, just on this thing? And it's almost like day one, 1,000 level battle passes are almost it's almost like people are expected to save up for the entire year now just to blow hundreds of dollars on this thing as a status symbol. And it was difficult for me to buy this year because the last couple of years, I at least had the justification of saying, okay, I'm working for an esports team where Dota is our main pillar. So Phil, EG's COO, I think he's a CGO now or whatever the title is, but he basically said, this is your chance to give back. This is your chance to show appreciation for the game that enables us to do our job. And I really, appreciate that line of thinking, but it's also a thought of I don't know. It's just so much money. And I don't know that it always amazes me, but it always makes me think, I'm how many years does Dota have left? How many years does when does it die? You know, when does it not make that? When does it not surpass the last year? And I always think it's going to be this year.
Do you think it ever will get to that?
I always think it's going to be this year. It's going to be this
Really?
year. Not this year, but not this one specifically.
No, but every year.
But going in, I always think
this
is going to be the year that it doesn't work out. This is going to be the year that, you know, other games, so many other games have come out in the meantime that, you know, so many other AAA games have come out, or games as a service games have come out. When I thought that like battle royales came out, when I thought that like looter shooters came out, like Destiny and whatever, I was like, okay, those people who normally would be wailing for the battle pass are now going to be, you know, doing that. And for the term, sorry, for the people who don't know, whales are a term of people it's people who buy into these kind of things. It's I think it's a casino term or gambling term where a small amount of people are spending the largest amount of money. And so they use the term whales, that they are big but solo, you know, big in terms of budget, but ultimately still solo. But I don't know. Every time I look at a battle pass from Valve, I just think, what have they innovated on, and what are they reusing? Like what features were in the previous battle pass? What features are new to this one? And is it enough value to justify a boost of X amount of dollars, you know? And with Valve, I don't know. Valve has a very efficient way of running things where they reuse assets. They reuse voice actors is a big one. They like to reskin things and then make them very prestigious. And I don't know. I don't want to sound too cynical, and I don't want to sound too like killjoy, but every time the International Battle Pass comes out, I think about it and I'm like, this isn't as valuable as I want it to be in terms of justifying like a couple $100 or something like that, and I know I'm not going to play it enough to boost the level to the level that I want to get the cool things. So for instance, you can spend like $60 Canadian and boost and get to level 100 instantly. And that's like with a 15, like if I were to buy it, you get a 15% discount on the levels if you buy it in bulk like that. And 160, level 160 is when you get like the new map, the map skin. And that's probably the best part of this. I'm looking at the map skin and I'm like, damn, this looks really good. It looks almost as good as the default map. And I'm hoping that FPS wise, it doesn't kill the game, because usually these terrains do kill the game. Yeah. But like 255, you get a persona, which is like the term that Valve used for a skin. That usually fundamentally changes the way that a hero plays. So the first persona they put out was one that took an adult character and made him into a kid, and they revoiced him, they reanimated him, that kind of stuff. So there's a persona for probably the most popular hero in Dota, Pudge. They made a persona for him at level 255. So that's like $150 if you were to buy that raw. But then like the next 4 big tiers are arcanas or personas that are like, arcanas are a tier of value in Dota, where previously if you bought an arcana skin, it was expected that all spells would have different effects, a different voice pack, a different, like, everything would change about the hero while still keeping the spirit of the hero, I guess. It would be lore related, or it would just be a tier above just a regular skin item. And for this battle pass, they put out 4 arcanas, and it's like, it's just like one takes a male hero and makes him female, because I appreciate in the lore. I appreciate in the lore they say that it's not Animage turned into a woman, it's Animage's disciple, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that that's a thing.
Oh, okay.
Where they just said, okay, it's a different character playing the same role, and I was like, oh, that's cool, pretty interesting. The next one is there was a character called Skeleton King, and they had to make him into a character called Wraith King for 2 reasons. One was Chinese censorship because of skeletons, and the other one was because Skeleton King was arguable that it was a Blizzard property, because Blizzard has a character called Skeleton King. So they made an arcana that re-switches the skin back to Skeleton King, but not in the way where they just took the old skin and brought it back. They actually made
Right,
yeah. They made it unique, but it's still a meme of, oh, you liked this hero once? We know that we can sell it back to you for $40. And then the last two I think are very interesting because they signal a big shift in Valve. I think the Queen of Pain Arcana is pretty standard. I don't know what it looks like because I don't think it's done yet. Like even if you got up to the level that it was supposed to, that to unlock it, I don't think you're available to use it. It's pretty standard. It looks like, okay, you've got a succubus character. Let's just make her more demonic. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Whatever. I get it. You look at the top level thing, which is level 575. So if I was to take my level 100 that I spent with $60 and I times that by like, I don't know, 60 times 5, that's
so many
that's
levels,
$300 plus like another 75. So my math is terrible. So you're looking at like, if you were to buy that raw with the discounts, you're looking at like $350. You get like 4 Arcanas, a persona, and a terrain for like $400. The last one is a Wind Ranger Arcana. Wind Ranger is like a very popular hero, like aesthetics wise, but the art and the way that is designed is very Riot Games. And if you look at the art, the key art for it, it reminds me so much of something that Riot would put out. It looks exactly like it. Like, I don't know about the style. It's something about the face or the colors. It looks so much like a League of Legends hero or a knockoff League of Legends hero. I think it's the teal as well. I'm not sure why, but that combination of like dark green and then bright going into that mint. I don't know if that's just a League thing, but every friend that I have that's a woman that plays Dota wants this. Every single one. Every single one I've seen is freaking out about this Arcana. And I'm like, Valve knew what they were fucking doing. Valve knows. And
Valve always knows, though.
Well, for people who know me, you'll know that I have not a conspiracy theory, but it's a thing that I am very adamant on, is that if a game knows how to capture a female audience, it's going to be able to capture a long running audience. Because
yeah, I think that's fair.
It stereotypically, and I don't know if this is insulting or not, but like females are the majority. Women, sorry, I don't know. People don't like the word females, but women are traditionally the most creators. They're the creators, you know. They're the fan works people. They are the cosplayers. They're the artists. They're the writers. They're the skins people to a certain degree. They are like if you did a demographic, I think of Riot's art team, which is like hundreds of people. Majority of them are probably women. And I have a theory that if a game can capture that audience, if a game can make their characters and world and lore attractive enough to a female audience, that audience will self-sufficiently market the game for them, because they will be creating art, they will be creating plushies, they will be creating t-shirts, they will be creating cosplay. They will go to conventions as these characters and cosplay them, and then that will do sufficient enough marketing to make other people want to take part in that audience, either from, oh, I can get attention by creating myself, like creating in this audience as well, or, oh, I can go where this is popular, where I can meet girls or I can meet other people to play with. That thought of this game is popular and alive, so it is worth my time, is something that a company can't always do themselves. It has to be coming from the community in some ways. And being able to capture a female audience means you will have the creators to be able to sustain that long term. And that's something Dota hasn't always been able to do. And that's something that Dota hasn't done well, is that cosplayers, there's a dedicated group of cosplayers, but if you go to any kind of big nerd convention, PAXs or whatever, you're going to outnumber the Dota cosplayers and Counter-Strike cosplayers. There are Counter-Strike cosplayers, but they are very few and far between. But you're going to outnumber those people with Riot, and Ubisoft is big with Rainbow Six. Those people, those two games, and Overwatch and that kind of stuff.
Overwatch is huge.
Overwatch is big, but all those companies who know how to capture that audience and know how to create an environment that demographic can latch on to, they have all this free marketing, and that signals to people this game is alive and it is worth spending my time with. And when I look at this Wind Ranger Arcana, I'm like, that's it. That's Valve. That's what Valve is doing in order to be able to bring in this demographic. And I don't know if that's a little too, always sunny with the red lines, but
I think you like. I don't think you even need to take it to that level. I think simply if a game, again, and this is, just in case anyone like is skipping around the podcast or whatever, so there's no misunderstanding. Not that this isn't to say anything else about like women in gaming or games, but like just because of the stereotype that surrounds games in the current day and age, and it's been changing, but even to this day, right? Generally, people who, let's look at it this way, people who are not that familiar with games see gaming as a primarily men's activity, and still is if you really take into just all the statistics, right? And that isn't to say women can't enjoy games. It's just currently the reality of the statistic is that. But then, so therefore, if you're able to capture, and this is for anything, if you're able to capture the minority group, right? That alone just signifies like not only a larger player base, but it now signifies that you've done not the impossible, but you've done what's supposed to be harder. And so now, obviously, the easier part should be easy for you, right? Because if you were able to capture the minority and they were willing to break that stereotype barrier and to come in and they're like, I don't mind if people question why I play games or this game. Then the majority obviously shouldn't have a problem with it, right? So I think regardless of even going that extra mile of like, then they'll like propagate this themselves in terms of creating and what, because I think that's what you were saying, because Dota, like creators in Dota often are some of the best creations I've seen. And I've hopped around like plenty of different games. So I don't think it's so much, I think it's more just a percentage thing at a sheer surface of, like you said, they didn't capture this audience as much, and therefore the creativity was always there, but there just wasn't as many people. And this isn't necessarily just between women and men, but just in general, the game didn't foster that as much because the player base was smaller, and therefore the division between majority and minority was bigger, and all things like that. But I would agree. I mean, clearly, anytime a type of cosmetic, and this isn't not necessarily not that all of them are targeted at women, but sometimes they're targeted, at men or younger kids versus older players, right? There's always a different target, but cosmetics are definitely, like, good cosmetics are always well targeted. Yeah. And then bad cosmetics are kind of just middle of the road.
Like the courier for this battle pass is a cat, and it plays with a ball of yarn. It's like, it's the same thing with like, I hate to just go back to it. Like it's always very hesitant to talk about, gender demographics and stuff, because I don't want to get anything wrong. I don't want to say anything like that's inadvertently like something I don't mean, but you look at the courier for this battle pass, it's a cute cat, you again, you look at the Wind Ranger Arcana, I see all my female friends who play Dota like go nuts about this, but they're also going nuts about this cat. And I'm not saying in a way that's like, oh man, Valve are just like pandering to women. No, it's about saying that, okay, can you expand your audience while still, making it seem natural with the game world and that kind of stuff.
I would put it this way. It's about getting an audience to care more about just the gameplay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Because when you tell me about the cat, I didn't know about the cat, but now I'm like, I kind of want that cat career, even though I'm probably not going to play that much Dota outside of TI.
I'm not a cat person.
No,
so
sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But it's like, I remember it was TI 8, I think, where the Juggernaut skin, the healing ward was like the golden cat.
Oh yeah. Lucky cat
from China. Yeah, Lucky Cat, and like me, and again, not just stereotype, but just surrounding me and a bunch of my Asian friends were like, that's freaking sick.
Yeah,
and I was like, I want that. And I don't play as much anymore, and I definitely don't play Juggernaut that much, but like, I want that. And it's like, now you've got me to care about your game outside of just the game, right?
Oh, totally.
Regardless of whether it's, and again, there's usually, obviously, I'm sure there's like research on who their like main target audience is, because that's how you run a business. But again, whether it's gender, whether it's, culture, race, whatever, it's just like you said, it's capturing a minority group that isn't tied to the core part of the game, or not as much, and capturing them, And then you have the people within the core part that also care now double because of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a successful model.
I think the way we can wrap this up is just say that Valve knows what they're doing. Like I don't.
I think Valve's all like that's something where you said something about Valve earlier, and like they're very efficient, and maybe it's a little cynical, and I think that's something that a lot of people. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't really think about it until I really got into the Valve ecosystem in esports and getting to see a lot of it from Dota 2's point of view and CSGO's point of view, and talking with people from both communities, is that Valve is a machine, right? And Valve is probably from my understanding, and obviously not the details of finances, but in terms of how they're run, is actually one of the like best, just pure business wise, like best businesses in gaming, because like they do more than just obviously like game development or publishing. So like it's just so much, like you said, so much of it is automated, so much of it is reused, but like efficiently, where you don't feel robbed of it.
That's the thing, is I'm starting to feel robbed. I'm starting to not feel robbed, because robbed is a bit of a misnomer. Sure. But if you look at some of the things on the Battle Pass, and I didn't mean for this to go this long, but it's like if we go through this Battle Pass page and take out everything that is either a feature that is just reused, or think about chat wheel sounds. Chat wheel sounds, all of the sound packs that aren't like the voice caster lines are stock sound effects. If you like, Valve games use stock sound effects like badly. Mm-hmm. Some like Ursa's ult, you can hear that line, that that roar. That's in a lot of things. You can not just Valve things and not just video games. There are certain musics that you're like. So they have a library, and they just say, okay, well, we'll just take some things that are relevant to certain situations in game and just make them a sound pack, because we can pay for them and we can have the license for them. And for them to sell that as a new feature, I go, no, you just paid for a sound license. Like that doesn't, that isn't something that sells a battle pass for me. And the same with the casters. It's like, I'm happy that they at least get some kind of cut, and they at least like are immortalized in the game. But those are things that Valve didn't like make. Those are Valve gave the license to the tournament to use the game. I get that, but it's not something custom. It's just something that they just curated the voice lines, and then they just put them in the game. And it also bugs me that you don't keep them forever. You get them, and then they sell them to you again next year as like this special thing, and you're just like, well, like I don't know, like emoticons. No one uses emoticons besides very edge cases, and it's like if I take out emoticons, if I take out chat wheel lines, if I take out the sprays, which are like one like art piece that they had someone produce, the consumables, every battle pass or every event are just the same thing over and over reskinned. The soccer ball is new this year, but like I don't know. I look at some of the stuff like ping cosmetics, and I'm like, okay, well, you just reskinned the pinging game, fine. But that isn't going to justify like a multiple $100 purchase for me, I guess. I'm looking, like, for me with these battle passes or with these updates to the game, I'm always looking for things that like change the game fundamentally or make me want to play the game more. And those kind of things don't really do it for me. Guilds do, but I know that guilds are going to be something that Valve neglects. They're going to do them for like, it's same because you were saying
I saw you tweet about this, and it was funny because there were people in my Discord that were very excited about guilds, and then I saw you tweet so cynically about it.
Well, because Valve has this podcast is going long, but at the same time, it's like Valve has a habit of setting things up to be automated. Like you were saying, they're very good at automating things. They've automated battle cups, which are weekly tournaments that they don't need to run. They're going to automate the hell out of this, where, the guild challenges and daily contracts and that kind of stuff. Those are things that are going to be randomly generated. They're going to have a pool of defeat X amount of things, and it's going to mix and match, and they're going to refresh every week. So Valve never have to touch it. But something is going to break, and then Valve is never going to fix it. And then that means no one's going to use guilds, which means that Valve is going to say, why are we still maintaining guilds? And that happens almost with everything that they do when it comes to in-game stuff. Dota Plus hasn't been updated in like 8 months. The DPC app, which is a thing that you only get with Dota Plus, which was, oh, you get in-game rewards for predicting things right. That's just a broken nightmare. Like, either your rewards don't count, or you can't predict games, or games just don't get listed. It's like they love doing that thing where they launch something where they're like, oh yeah, we can just like dust our, wash our hands, be done with it, let it self-sustain, and then if something breaks, they don't want to fix it, and then it dies a death. And it's like, why would I invest all my time thinking, oh man, guilds are a great place that I can build my community, and I can really attach myself to a group of people that I can queue with regularly, and I can, make new friends and get better at the game and not have to solo queue all the time. But then you're like, why would I do that when I'm getting a suboptimal experience that might not be permanent because they might just link it to a battle pass? And then it just doesn't feel. I'm very careful with how I spend my money these days, and this doesn't feel like something
So I will say, the feeling I get is, and I say this very carefully, and I don't mean it in any negative way.
Of course.
But I think maybe you're just not as invested in Dota 2 as you used to be for whatever reasons.
Yeah,
and not necessarily that you don't like Dota 2, but just maybe you were much more invested in it I think that's what it comes down to. Right?
I want to be,
for
though.
me,
I want to
right,
be,
and I think that's what it is, that you want to be, and so but now that you're a little bit further from it, right? Because before, like you said, you were part of EG where it was so much bigger, and so everything kind of came together, and now you have to find all basically your own reasons to care, right? Yeah. Purely your own reasons. Because I'm listening to you and I'm like, as someone who has never spent more than $20 or $25, whatever that first tier is, for the battle pass, I'm like, yeah, but those features, if I grind it, I grind it. If I don't, I don't. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's cool. I got, I can try to hope for some of the cooler stuff with the little treasure packs and whatever. And so I think it's because you've been in the deeper end of caring.
I'm used to living in Dota. That's the thing, is I'm used to living
it,
yeah.
And you had supplemental reasons to help that on top of your own passion for it, and then now having to sustain that passion on your own, I think is perhaps part of the reason. Not all of it. I think
totally.
Some of what you said I think makes sense factually, and also anyone who's looked at how Valve operates, the things we talked about, automating a lot of things, efficiency, reusing. Generally they're very good at it, and that's why obviously they're able to keep their audience. But I think that's part of it. I think you're trying to find more of your own reasons to sustain that passion, and sometimes that's hard. It's hard.
Well, my primary friend group and I play Dota a lot, and that's our main game that we play together. And I think I got trapped a little bit because I'm looking at these things that I know are going to go away. I'm looking at these things
that always does feel bad, though.
No, it does, but I think I needed to more catch myself and think, if I don't get this Animage persona, am I really going to play Animage that much? If I play this, even other Arcanas before, for heroes that I thought I would play, I barely play those heroes, and it
right.
At the same time, I think what you said about me not being as invested before or now is probably true, where I'm trying to figure out, do I really want to stay? And if I don't stay, what does that mean in terms of this stuff, the time that I've put in? For me, when you were saying, oh yeah, okay, I spend $25, I play what I play. That's almost the thing where I was like, oh yeah, that's an option. Crap, I forgot that was an option. I think it's just an intersection of the thought of does Dota die? And if it does die, what does that mean? And that's another topic for another podcast. But
yeah,
I think I have some thinking to do, and I also have some I'm also guilty of buying the battle pass and then not playing, or not playing as much. So I need to do some thinking, but I think that's a good place to end off. What are you doing this week? Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, all at Will Chobra. So that's WILLCHOBRA. Mostly. So I'm shifting to really commit a lot more consistent and bigger chunks of time to streaming.
Damn, son, you were doing. It's not like you were bad before.
No, I know, but now I want to I'm trying to. I want to take the challenge of trying to make it something sustainable long term, instead of just like, while I'm doing it this week, I'll make it work. So you can find me there. In terms of like content you can expect, so like we talked about, still going through Final Fantasy 10-2 right now. After we're done with that, we're gonna jump into the rabbit hole that is Kingdom Hearts, so more Square Enix.
Good luck, my friend.
Yeah, but then we always kind of have breaks in between these long JRPGs, so chat likes to try to make me play like horror games because I'm very bad with them, so you always find a little bit more varied content. But that's where you can find me. I also have a Discord community, so you can find that link both on my Twitter and Twitch, where we talk mostly about games, but other stuff like TV shows, esports, obviously with my background in esports, and even like Korean culture if you're interested in that. If you didn't know, I'm Korean American and I currently live in Seoul, South Korea. So that's where you can find me, and that's what I'll be doing. What about you, Matt?
I am currently not really doing much on the content train, mostly just because I did a mental list, or like I Emily Chow, right? Like she's a mutual friend of ours, and I've been feeling guilty a little bit lately because I'm not doing as much streaming or like writing as I usually do, and it's one of those things where I go back to it as a comfort because it's something I know how to do. So when I don't do it and I feel like I need to be doing it, I tend to feel very guilty or feel very like lost. So the last couple podcasts we've ended with this kind of stuff. I've just been like, I might stream, I might write, whatever. I'm kind of realizing how much like life stuff I'm trying to manage or trying to do outside of that, and realizing that content should not be as big of a priority for me right now. And I shouldn't feel as guilty about it as I do. So like right now I'm trying to like fix my diet. I'm trying to like work at a healthy like work-life boundary for like the first time in like 5 years. I'm like trying to sleep well. I'm like trying to do all these things that could easily all individually be like multi-month projects on their own.
Yes.
And I'm trying to do like 5 of those on my own at once. And it's like, okay, I can feel less guilty that I'm not streaming or not blogging, you know, especially when I have a job that pays all my bills and that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to be better about that, and not freaking out about it internally. Like I said, it's a safe space for me in terms of creating.
Good.
But I'm trying to be better about it. But so yeah, I don't know. I'm still going to be trying to, as I say that, I'm still like, I'm still going to be, tweeting and shit. mattd.cc is all my relevant links. I still also have a Discord. It's a little quiet right now, so feel free to join and we'll talk about some fun stuff. You can check out, I forgot to plug the website again last week, but gmncast.com. We have all our episodes 12 weeks in a row. Holy crap. I'm going to constantly be excited about that. That's like 3 months, dude. gmncast.com. We also have a subreddit r/gmncast where we have comment threads for all of our podcasts and that kind of stuff. Thanks for listening. Will, I hope you have a good night.
And I hope you have a good morning, Matt.
Awesome. We will see you guys next week.
Cool.